Welcome to Fly to Freedom, and I'm super happy today to say that I have a guest. I have Florina Dominique Thali. Florina is an osteopath, coach, lecturer, researcher, dancer, artist, and mother of the podcast The Breathing Body. And she is a woman who suffered from an eating disorder for many years and found healing through movement, body awareness, and rediscovering the fascination and miracle our body expresses every day, the sweet songs of feelings and emotions. She initially trained as a dancer in Denmark and the Netherlands. During this time, Florina encountered many somatic practices, in particular the Alexander technique and idiokinesis, which I might have messed up the word, but which continuously taught her as a facilitator the art of creating space and finding ease in movement by using images and imagination. The wish of engaging her hands in care for others led her to gain a master's degree at the European School of Osteopathy. And she is currently practicing in private clinics in Kent and London, as well as working for the Osteopathic Centre for Children in London and lecturing for various osteopathic colleges across the UK. Born out of her own story, Florina created various platforms to support women recovering from eating difficulties and living a life beyond their wildest dreams. Florina teaches yoga for women and a women's circle in person across the UK and holds a 10-week online coaching program called Dancing into Light. Florina, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so wonderful to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Just a few quick fire icebreaker questions to start.
Yes.
So, number one, if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Wow. An instant question. Now I start thinking if I could instantly become an expert in something right now, it would be able to speak Italian. That's a
Oh,
secret hidden
wow.
wish. Yes.
That's a really good one.
Yes.
Yeah, language. I like that. Languages are not my strong point at all. And I get them muddled up as well when I know a little bit of French and a little bit of Spanish, but I tend to kind of say like a sentence that's got both in. It's not great. Is there a hobby or an activity you've always wanted to try but you haven't yet?
Martial arts. Yes.
Oh, wow. Any
Several
particular one?
times I looked up pages or classes, but I've actually never went to. What would I do? Probably something not judo and not too much, not like a boxing martial art, but maybe taekwondo or what is it called? Capoeira, that mix between dance and I think it's called capoeira, mix between dance and martial art. But martial arts, that fascinates
That
me.
sounds really exciting.
Mhm.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Dinner with an historical figure. I think at that moment in time, I would say Andrew Taylor Still, who was the founder of osteopathy, which I studied. And I've obviously read lots of books or texts, quotes from him. And I'm in deep love with osteopathy. And I would love to be able to have dinner with him and hear from him. And
That's
ask certain questions.
a great reason. So he's always already has a big part in your life anyway.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Many good pieces of advice. I think the best piece of advice, doch, definitely, that was from Baron Katie. You might
Yes.
know her. The
Yes.
author of the book Loving What Is. And
Amazing book.
I actually read that book on my healing journey. And she gives the advice, or she writes about that there are only three businesses. There is your business, there is the other person's business, and there is God's business. And your only responsibility is to care about your business. And I found that the most helpful advice I've ever got, to just think, which business am I in? Actually not mine, so then let it go, not my business.
Incredible advice. Absolutely incredible
In a
advice.
loving way, of course, it's not
Yes,
meant
because
arrogantly.
we all do
Yes.
think about things that don't concern us and we don't need to be worrying about. So yeah, it's staying in your own lane, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And what am I going to choose for the last question? If you could change one thing in the world, you had a magic wand and you could change one thing, but just one, what would you change?
The first word which comes is peace. That we all awaken to peace within ourselves. That we find that we all start within ourselves. That would be my wish.
I love that. And actually, with you saying that, with the best piece of advice I got was that everything starts within. You have to look within.
Absolutely. Yes.
And yeah, so peace within is,
Mm-hmm.
oh, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
Okay, right. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as to why you are where you are and what's led to this place?
Yeah, that's such a wonderful question, right? Because the first thing which I think is, if you would have asked me that question 3, 4, or 5 years ago, because the last part said why that you are now here where you are, and what did I want to say? Yeah, it's such a beautiful question, because the first thing which I want to say is that the answer is what led me here, the thing which caused me the biggest pain and the greatest struggle and the greatest challenge. That's why I'm now here doing what I'm doing. And what I want to say, would you have asked me 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I would have never thought that I would be sitting here and telling someone about my recovery journey and the work which arose out of it. So who am I? I'm Florina. I'm originally from Switzerland. And I came to the UK, Switzerland, it hints my accent. I came to the UK 7 years ago to study osteopathy. I initially trained as a dancer, as you rightly said, and I just always wanted to move. That was always my passion since a little child. If I think back, I just always wanted to move. So I studied dance, which was, as I'm sure we get on to later, in the end more of a struggle than a joy. And I left the dance world, and yet the greater the pain became, the greater always the calling to. I had that sentence, and I would say to my mom, I just want to study the human body in all its depth. And I didn't know why, but I kept saying it was almost a need. I need to study the human body in all its depth. And that brought me to the UK back in 2017, yes. That was a very intuitive decision. I suddenly woke up. I had a dream all about literally bones and muscles and joints, and I thought osteopathy. I didn't even really know what it was. So I came to the UK and I embarked on a 4-year journey towards a master's degree in osteopathy. The movement kind of shifted a little bit to the side. It was also academically very intense. But I did enjoy that intensity of the studies. For some reason, I really craved for something intense and with depth. And since I graduated, I then kind of got stuck in the UK for the good. I found wonderful clinics in which I practice, very much involved also at the Osteopathic Center for Children, which I absolutely love. And yeah, who am I in the last, I would say maybe especially 2 years, and especially the last year was where I really started to share and really live through the story I've lived through the past 17 years, but kind of lived alongside. And suddenly I allowed myself to live through my story. And that is why I'm here right now talking to you. Yeah, that's a brief overfly over who I am.
Okay, thank you. So tell us a little bit about your struggles with food,
Mhm.
and is that linked to the dancing?
I get that asked many times. It's very interesting. So I can remember such a clear key moment, which was when I was in the fifth primary school. I think it's fair to say that I grew up in an absolute I call it my raspberry pink bubble in just the most loving family with wonderful parents, and I felt so safe and so nurtured, so that when that day when I went to school, my first day in school literally felt like a splash. And I see how something drops to the ground and just the bubble splashed. And interestingly, Julia, I can really remember how that voice, how I thought, oh, that's how life really is. There was almost a sense of a little bit anger towards my parents that they didn't tell me that I might get mobbed. They didn't tell me that I might get excluded. They didn't tell me that it matters what I'm wearing. They didn't tell me that my woolen socks, etc., etc.
So
And
you
I
didn't
was
feel prepared or equipped.
no, well, on one level, I was beautifully prepared, but it felt to me like I hit the hard reality of experiencing exclusion or exactly. And I mean, I grew up in a family, we didn't had a car, we didn't had a television, so there were many reasons between children to mob someone. Anyway, but why am I saying that? So I went to school and I suddenly absolutely felt, and I did feel it already at that time, I'm not good enough. Looking back in time, I can really see that that's what was going on. But I know that I always had the fear with any task, with anything. My first thought was always, what if I can't do that? What if I'm not good enough? And it went on until I went to the fifth primary school, and now we come to the eating. And I can remember, I tell you, what day, what break, how the light was. I remember what I was wearing. And I was walking over the schoolyard. And I think on some level, I tried so hard to change that belief, but I couldn't change that belief. I was a child. I didn't even know that that was a belief and blah, blah. But I tried to get control or to change something. So I
Mhm.
was walking over that schoolyard. It was a Wednesday, 10 o'clock break. It was a sunny. I was wearing my favorite pearls around my neck, my red shirt. And suddenly there was this voice. If you would be thinner, you would be loved and life would be easier. And it made so much sense to me. It felt, in that moment, it felt like a relief. And I so remember that voice. Um, and that's where my eating difficulty started, literally.
Wow. So it's like
Or
almost like a lightning bolt.
it was almost like a lightning bulb. Yes, absolutely. Or like, yeah, there was a desperate child, if I look back, trying to figure out how to get to that love and being accepted. And that was the best solution I came up with.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
it's tough, isn't it, on children because at that
Hmm.
age we don't have the capabilities to analyze things. We're just searching,
No.
searching, searching for something
Mhm.
that makes us feel acceptable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what touch, looking back in time, I think, wow, how touching is that, how a child. Now I would talk to someone, we would tell it, but as a child, you see something and therefore something must be wrong with you. That's
Yes,
that's how
it's
I coped, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
the answer to
you
your question is, it started before I was actually really, really dancing. Yeah, I was fully in it already before I even started dancing.
okay. So tell us how it
Mhm.
progressed.
Yeah, so that was when I was 11 years in the fifth primary school. And that also was the year, now that you ask me, interesting, that I went to the first ballet class. I came quite late to dancing, My parents thought, oh, really dancing, and sent me to other things. So I only started dancing when I was 11. And I think between 11 and let's say maybe 19, when I then went to dance colleges, it just became a constant. And looking back in time or telling that to someone, I think, wow, that is crazy. I was 11, 12, 13, and it was just a constant making new plans, new attempts, not to eat for 3 days, then thinking, no, that is silly, eat again, then punish yourself. Um, yeah, I literally feel the years between 11 and 19 was just a constant planning. I just see you ask me, how did it evolve? And I say planning. That's how it felt. It was just all about having to plan what I eat. And I mean, I went to, how do you call that in English in Switzerland? It's called Gymnasium, Kantonsschule, maybe something like grammar school. I played the
Okay, yeah.
violin. I was always an incredibly keen student. I worked very hard. And looking back in time, I think, of course, I had to work so hard. I had to kind of push all those feelings away. Um, but until I was 19, I was never thin in it, that I don't think that people recognized. And I think until I was 19, I didn't even tell to any therapist. I didn't tell anyone. And then I studied dance, and that was when I think, yeah, when it peaked. I called it the peak. On some level, that was for a young woman who struggled with an eating disorder, and that was my one way where I could control or achieve something. On one level, I was so happy. It's crazy. I remember I went to Copenhagen to study dance, and I thought, yes, finally, no one will overwatch what I eat, right? My mom won't say anything. Now I can really take control, which is so paradox when I tell you about that.
Yes, but it's almost like the freedom of being able to fully be part of the eating disorder almost, isn't it? The
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
secrecy, I suppose, the actual,
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
do this properly now when you've been
Mm-hmm.
trying to do it properly, but other
Mm-hmm.
people get in your way and stop you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that sudden freedom of being able
Yeah,
to do it. I do remember that.
absolutely. Because that's, wouldn't you agree, Julia? It becomes such a you it becomes your personality, and it becomes such a rewarding personality, right?
Yes.
And at home, I felt I was living in two different bodies. Florina not telling and doing what everyone does and eating normally, and Florina who actually just wants to restrict, and suddenly being on one's own. Yes, you can kind of fully surrender to that eating disorder personality, what I call it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally hear you. It just
Hmm.
feels like you can be who you think you're supposed to be then.
Yes, that's how it feels. Yes.
Not who you are, but who you think you're
No.
supposed to be, which
Hmm.
is very
Hmm.
different, isn't it?
Hmm. Hmm.
So what happened next?
Mm. Yeah, what I just thought I add there, exactly, one can, on one level, what I felt, wow, now I've got all the freedom, but at the same time, isn't there that heavy carpet resting upon one? The more you want to actually kind of break free in something you think is freedom, which of course is not, the greater also that carpet and that heaviness gets. So what happens then? So I started to study dance, and of course I hadn't resolved that belief of I'm not good enough, even though I thought I had with restricting foods. But of course that voice became bigger and bigger and bigger, and it literally, that's how it felt. It became so big that after a couple of months already, it felt like my whole body was just screaming, "You're not good enough, you're not good enough, I can't do that." And at the same time, I ate less and less and less. And it became such a, I can only describe it in, or this would be the gesture, it became such a hard, gray, tough cage I found myself in, that I suddenly didn't cope anymore. I couldn't, I mean, on one level, I didn't had that much energy. I never had to be hospitalized. I was never that thin, but I was very thin. But I want to say punished myself. I so punished myself on so many levels, Julia, that of course I literally I couldn't put a step anymore into the dance studio. And I rang my mom, and we had to perform a solo. That was the key moment. We had to create a solo, perform a solo, and only kind of if you did that, you could move on in the course, in the studies. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I felt broken. And my mom came and she looked at me, and I think for the first time maybe also saw how I lost weight. And we packed my suitcases and went back home. That was the next chapter.
There's you can never be enough, do enough, or follow enough to make the eating disorder happy, can you? It's as soon as you think you're getting somewhere, it changes the rules, the goalposts move, and it's exhausting.
It's so exhausting.
And it sounds like you got to that point of just absolute exhaustion of trying and trying and trying, and every time the goalposts move, don't they? There's just
absolutely.
It's a spiral. You cannot achieve what you think you're trying to achieve.
Yes. Yeah, it feels like it's like a chasing, right? It feels like, wow, we spent years of chasing something which you can never reach, and constantly missing the actual moment.
And it takes up all of your energy, both mental and physical. It's all encompassing, and slowly the rest of the world just falls away as you just become trapped in this world of restriction and trying and trying and trying. And and it almost brings tears to my eyes when I think back. And
yes. Yeah, that always makes what touches me the most, or exactly makes me cry, when I seeing how I missed actually such a big. I sometimes it feels like, oh gosh, I missed these lush years between 11 and 19, and it's keeping running behind something which is impossible to reach.
That was our journey. That was where we were meant to be.
Yes, you are absolutely right.
And neither you nor I would be where we are now if we hadn't had the journey we've been on.
Absolutely.
So you went home with your mum, packed up all your stuff.
We went back home, and I think that was the first time where I, for myself, really acknowledged and thought, yes, I need help, and I want to change that, and I need help, and I'm gonna seek help. And yet, right, that was in, well, how old was I then? That was in 2000, and anyway, that's still, afterwards there were still a couple of years to actually to really change, of course, fallbacks, but that was a key moment. And I went back, and the interesting thing, and that's one of the messages I want to bring to all the listeners. My mom said, let's go to this therapist, to that therapist, to this, to that. And I think she took me there and there and there, and I just didn't, and I always said, no, that's not right, and then until she asked me, okay, what do you need? And I remember how I became still, and my first thing I said was, let's go to the mountains. let's go
Ah,
to the mountains. And that was the first time since years that I felt that someone asked me, what do you need? And that I couldn't even think, and my body said, let's go to the mountains. So my mom, as wonderful as she is, she said, let's go to the mountains. So we took our backpacks just for maybe a week or two. It wasn't long. And it was spring, and we went to this Airbnb in the mountains. And we arrived, and I walked onto that field. I remember so well. It was spring, wild orchids were sprouting, and I lied onto the ground and I just cried. And that
wow.
was the best therapist my mom could ever have taken me to. And I was sitting there. Luckily, she took a picture, and I love to look at that picture. It's me between orchids. And I knew that's how it feels if I listen to myself. And that makes me now cry.
That's so beautiful. So your body knew what you needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was sitting there, and in that moment, I could really say, yes, fuck the dance class, fuck it all. I'm here because I said I need to go to the mountains. And
Yeah, you
yes,
needed to connect with nature
yes,
and just be.
and just be and listen to that voice rather than that heady voice. Hmm.
It can be so hard though to, if you've lived in your head for so long, to
Mm.
find that connection into your body, to find
It's,
your intuition,
yes,
your
it's so
voice.
hard. It's a practice. That's
It
the
is,
commitment. That's the
it is,
commitment to the healing journey.
yeah, it is very much
Mm,
practice. It's not a
mm,
once and done.
mm, 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 mm. Yes. And then what happened then? So that was such a potent moment. We didn't stay long. We didn't need to stay long. It was just about acknowledging that voice in me. And we
Yeah,
went back, and now I'm gonna go a little bit quicker. Then I had a couple 2 years where I still, that calling was still there. I want to study the body in all its depth, and didn't know yet quite why. I worked on a farm. I went traveling India, which were all very nurturing and really good experiences, and definitely grounded me, brought me back to myself. I found I ate again normally. I had a healthy weight, and yet it was still all about the food. Yes, I ate, but it was still all about the food. I was in more peace, and I wasn't that cage which I described before, got a bit looser. There were some pillows in the cage suddenly, and there was a light and some flowers, and it was still all about the food. But there was lightness. Um, that was for 2 years, and then was the moment when I always had that drive to get a degree and to study. And of course, when I quit the dancing as that eating disorder sufferer, that you can imagine, that was a big telling myself, yeah, of course, now you even failed the dancing. Now you even, not
yeah.
even that you could maintain. Um, so clearly I needed to go back to uni. And after those 2 years kind of traveling at home, that's when I then came to the UK and started the osteopathy studies. And yeah, I think saying yes to study osteopathy, I think hadn't I, if I'm not sure, I think going down that path, that was the beginning of one part of me really saying yes to heal, because I so said yes to myself to really do what I really want to do.
It sounds like you just had this natural urge to be totally connected and understand your body.
Yes, yes,
And that's
yeah,
where you were being guided to.
mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And often I think that's the beauty, and at the same time the interesting thing about my journey, right? How the more I pushed the body away, the more I was attracted to it. It felt a little bit like I was dancing tango with my body for many years. Um, and I didn't, when I started studying osteopathy, I didn't yet know why precisely. Why did I have that calling? But I started studying, and for me, it was all about, of course, it was about learning techniques to treat people, but it was really all about, for me, it felt like it was all about the fascination of that miraculous body we inhabit. I couldn't, I was such a keen student, but genuinely because I was so fascinated. In German, we say it takes your sleeve in. I couldn't, I bought as many books as I never bought within 1 year. I couldn't stop studying anatomy and physiology, and I was in awe for that human body. And I think that's the first time where that voice started to get bigger. Or I suddenly realized, wow, how could I be so harsh and hard to something which is so miraculous and so working for me every day? That's where that other light started to grow out, which is part of the work I do today.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from using your body as a form of control
Yes.
to
To
really wanting to fully understand your
Yeah,
body.
it went from using my body as a, I would say, it went from using my body as a way to control to a place of using my body as a source of wisdom and unfolding and just revealing things. And there I need to bring in the embryo. I'm not sure how much, if that is, for some people, that's not even a term, embryology, if that's the subject, the science of how we grow in utero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was in our first year, I think, already when we learned about embryology. And we just had, I don't know, maybe 4 classes about it. But that that was one of the first huge game changers for me. We had so little, and I kept reading and studying and immersing myself into that subject since then, and it became a big part of my work. When I saw how that so deeply touched me, how a sperm meets the egg, there is this one cell, there is this wholeness right from the start, and how I saw or learned how that embryo, that being which we all were and which we all still are, how it just unfolds. For me, it felt like I started calling that my original yes. It felt like conception happens, and then that body, its original gesture was just saying, it just said yes. And Julia, it didn't ask, it didn't look into the mirror, it didn't compare, it didn't judge itself, it didn't even have doubts about itself. It just said, yes, of course I'm growing. That's what I saw in that embryo. It just said, yes, I'm up for it. And since then, its only gesture was expansion, growing, folding, curling, but always, again, I say the word unfolding, like a flower opening its petals. And many of my colleagues thought, oh my gosh, embryology, that's too complex. And I was just sitting there and I was just touched. And I thought, wow, if that is who I still am, and if that was the most original expression of my body, then that's still what my body wants to do. And I saw how that embryo is nothing else than creation. And suddenly it felt like puzzle stones fell in place. I noticed that embryo needed safety, love, and nurturing. So that means I still need safety, love, and food. And I realized the embryo needed its physical structure to come into life and to create. And I realized I need my body to create my life. I always had big dreams and visions and ideas. And suddenly I noticed, Julia, I can't do that without my body. And that's when I started calling my body her. And that was the other game changer. I started calling my body her. And I noticed, wow, I need her. And you know what? She needs me too. And now I laugh about it because, yes, from tears, then a whole period happened where I would very still cry a lot, but from crying into laugh and joy. And that's the sweet song. Now I said a lot.
No, it's been absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of bits I wanted to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
When when you were a teenager, you were
Mm-hmm.
using your body to control
Mm-hmm.
by controlling your body, and I guess probably also using your body as a shield against the world.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
When
Mm-hmm.
you started
Mm-hmm.
to follow your passion and your dream of learning about the body,
Mm-hmm.
was that were you connected to your body then, or were you still you'd gone from using it
Mm-hmm.
as a shield to using it as a tool?
Mm-hmm. I think I would say the shield definitely started softening, and yet I had all these game-changing moments, and I start say yes and yes, and still it took a couple of years to really be connected to my body. So I would say yes, the shield started softening, and I think I started to tap into a dialogue, but
Mhm.
I wasn't yet connected, not at all. And
So
I've always no go.
I was gonna say, do you think the learning and the
Mhm.
yearning to learn about your body
Mhm.
was all part of wanting and needing that connection, but first
Yes.
had to oh, what's the word? I'm terrible at words sometimes.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's exactly also why I chose, for example, osteopathy, because and I'm learning that, of course, still now a lot. I'm on my path and journey still. Um, so I chose a profession where more and more I had to learn actually, I a profession which actually which forces you, gently forces you to be connected to yourself, because how can I connect with anyone else or facilitate changes in any other body if I'm not deeply connected to the stillness within me, right? That's the principle of osteopathy. um so yes, and therein also lies the gift. Florina then chose a profession which it couldn't have forced me more to really go onto that journey to connect with myself.
And respect yourself, I imagine, to learn
Yes.
about something so
Mm-hmm.
complex and
Mm-hmm.
miraculous and
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
our bodies are just so clever, and to
Yeah.
learn all that and not you'd
Mm-hmm.
have to respect, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You would have to
Yeah.
respect the body.
Absolutely. I love that you say respect, because that's also the moment where I started to notice what actually breaks my heart. That's a little advertisement there for people who haven't read the book The Awakened Woman from Dr. Tererai Trent. I think it's very new. You must read that, Julia.
I
And
haven't read
she
it. I'm
says,
writing it
oh, it's a
down.
wonderful book.
Read
Write it
Woman.
down
Who
and
was it by?
invite her on by Dr. Tererai Trent. I'll send you a link. We can put it into the show notes. I wish
Yes,
every
please.
woman to read that book. And because she says that we find out what is our calling by asking ourselves the question, what breaks your heart? Not actually, what is your greatest dream? What breaks your heart? And you saying respect, in that moment, I noticed so clearly what actually breaks my heart, right? It broke my heart to see myself pushing that unfolding body, that embryo, that miraculous structure away. And I noticed how it's breaking my heart to see other people, especially other young women, saying no to that thing in very inverted commas, which is actually there. the channel to live their greatest dreams. So yes, I learned to respect. That's really important to say. Hmm.
I absolutely love that. What breaks your
Hmm.
heart? That's
It's such a good question. And to use the word,
powerful.
she says, Julia, she says, let that question become your heartbeat. Feel it as your pulse. And just allow that question to speak through you, to you, what you are meant to do. It's such a good question.
It
What
is.
breaks your heart? Yeah.
Wow. I'm just going to speak to that because
Yes,
it's
do.
me, because I've lived it, because of the difference in how I feel. It's when people are so trapped that they can't see that there's joy in life.
Yes,
That breaks
yes.
my heart so much.
Mm. And that's what that makes you go forward and go for what you
Yes,
do.
that's
And
why I do what I do.
absolutely, that then makes us so alive, right? That's another wonderful question I love. Out of that question, I feel the question comes, so what makes you feel alive? And then go and do it. There's this wonderful quote saying, ask yourself what makes you feel alive, and then go and do it, because what the world needs is people who are alive. Don't ask yourself, what
Yes,
does the world need? Ask yourself, what makes me truly feel and come alive? Mhm.
because when you're alive, your light is on and then it shines all around you.
Absolutely. And then it can spark the light of others.
Yes,
Mhm. Mhm.
so
Mhm.
oh, well, we pretty much answered my next question already.
Mm.
Um, you are grateful to the
Mm.
anorexia, aren't you?
I am absolutely grateful, yeah. Yeah. And I really mean it. I really mean it. It's triggering. It's sometimes triggering for people who are in different place in their journey when you say, wow, actually I do share in public and I say it's your best friend, it's your greatest gift. It can be, I say, a fast track to yourself. Um, and I think that brings me to share what was the other big game changer, because, interestingly, Julia, we all have so different healing journeys, right? For me, I think in the end, the greatest amount of healing in suddenly a really quick time, faster than I ever thought it could happen, was not when I went into an intense therapy, but when I suddenly the pennies dropped down, when I suddenly, from a felt sense, realized what this actually is about, when I realized what the healing is about. And there I do have to give a quote or mention Dr. Anita Johnston. Her book was a huge support on my healing journey. Um, yes, that was a big, that, and I find that so fascinating. It wasn't the moment I, from an embodied way, felt or understood what that actually is about, that it actually really truly is my best friend, then things just got easier. In literally, it felt in a miraculous way.
So, how do you differentiate? How would you explain the difference between when you're early in the eating disorder and
Hmm.
you feel it's your best friend because it's
Hmm.
it's protecting you from the world, it's your
Hmm.
shield and
Hmm.
it's your
Hmm.
superpower,
Hmm.
and at that time you don't believe it's killing you.
Hmm.
At that point, many
Hmm.
people, myself included, believe
Hmm.
that the illness is their best friend
Hmm.
and it's destroying them.
Ah, I see what you mean. Yes. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how does that then become your best friend again?
Yes, I can tell you I can only say from a felt sense, I had exactly these moments when I knew this is my best friend, but everything in my body contracted and I felt heavy. And yes, I had this best friend and I hold on to it very dearly, but everything closed, the color was gray and it was heavy. And it's
Yes.
still my best friend, but suddenly from that gesture, from it closing together, there was, it's my best friend and it's expanding. I can only say it like that. And it's still the best friend, and maybe it's probably even the same best friends. It's still the eating disorder or the eating difficulty or the eating disorder self. But I'm not sure if I answer your question. What I also want to say, I think maybe looking back in time, I think for a long time I tried to recover from the eating, and now I call I call it for myself. It's not about recovery, but it's the uncovery process.
Okay. So if,
Hmm.
tell me if
Mm-hmm.
I'm understanding this right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm whirring it around in my head to a way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking that I
Mm-hmm.
think I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So the eating disorder took you to your darkest place.
Yes.
It gave you
Mm-hmm.
your greatest pain.
Mm-hmm.
And from that pain, you were able to start uncovering and growing and really seeing
Yes.
where the it is. And
Mm-hmm.
in that way, it became your best friend because it was the catalyst for you to really start to grow and experience
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who you really truly are, and
Yes.
your mission, your passion, your
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
reason you're here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you've put that absolutely in the right words. So what it the exactly it invited me to, yes, I felt on the bottom of the ocean, and in the poem I have written, I've cried oceans of tears, and I would every evening lie in my dark room and just cry. But then the eating disorder, and again I have to say thank you, Dr. Anita Johnston, when I realized that the moment when I noticed these behaviors that I actually that this is, I think she calls it, that she used the word windows of opportunity, something like that, windows of light, in which we can ask ourselves the question, what is the feeling I'm trying not to feel? That was a
Yes.
question which I don't think it was even, doch, it was in a book. That was a question which I then met. So suddenly I would actually ask myself that question. And then that's when I then entered, I call that the last phase of my healing. So I suddenly actually put that question into space, and oh, Julia, were there feelings? Wow, was there sadness and pain? But
Yeah.
suddenly I allowed myself just to live, and this sounds poetic, but that's what I did, to live through those feelings. And yes, I had a whole year, you could ask my family, it was tough for everyone because I felt like depressed, and I think I looked depressed. I was just crying and crying and crying, and I felt so on the bottom of the ocean. And I went to therapist, and I actually almost got put onto I was almost closed from taking medication, but I knew no, no, no. It's now not about pushing those feelings away. I exactly have to now live through these feelings. And now I know it wasn't that I was depressed. I call that now, it felt like the last stage, and it was the grief stage. I suddenly actually, I was grieving over what I did to myself for these past 17 years. And these days now today I know that's the only thing, what feelings are meant to be felt, and I didn't
Yes.
acknowledge that for 17 years.
And
And
that's all the
that
feeling wants, isn't it? To be
that's all
felt.
the feeling wants. And that's when I noticed, of course it's not about the food, and of course it's about the feeling, the emotion underneath, and yes, they want to be felt, and oh, that's how it feels when I feel them. And oh wow, I actually feel lighter after I just be with that. And oh wow,
Yeah.
that's how it feels after I cry. And that's what I meant with uncovering. It felt each time I would again cry a whole hour, I took another layer of mud from from my crystal. That's the image I have for eating disorder. Uncovery, I call it uncovery.
Oh, that's lovely,
Ah,
actually. I've not heard
mhm,
that. And I love the mud from your
mhm.
crystal. That's
It's, yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really
Mm.
when you reach the darkest night of your soul, you can start to let the light
Mhm.
in.
Yes, yes. And I mean, many people probably know that it resonates. Yes, sometimes I call it falling to the bottom of the ocean. The wonderful thing is if you fall to the bottom of the ocean, that's also what I want to say, you can't fall much deeper then.
Yeah.
And I see you have a pebble is thrown into a lake, it falls all the way down and it arrives, and actually for a moment there is just stillness.
And that's where you take time to feel.
Absolutely. And from there, then something new can arise.
Oh,
Yeah.
so beautiful. So
Mhm.
beautiful. I've completely lost my list of questions.
Oh,
this,
that's
this
okay.
conversation has
Mm.
just been happening so organically.
Mm.
So
Mm.
what do you want people to take away from
Mhm.
this conversation? If there was one thing they could take, what would you want it to be?
If there is one thing, yeah, if there is one thing I would want to say, eating difficulty, disorder, recovery, or uncovery starts when you arrive in your body. That's when it starts. It's not about arriving in your body by restricting or binging, but when you actually arrive in your body, that's that's where it starts. That's where you can move from a passive state into a creative process. And that's where transformation begins. That's what I would want to share.
Oh, that is
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
And you help people into their bodies through yoga and women's circles and your own coaching.
Yeah, yeah, it was so, yeah. There I have to say, just absolutely. I started osteopathy. I started working as osteopath. I love my clinics and I love to work as osteopath. And yet, I always felt a bit stuck on some levels. Or I kept saying to my sister, I know there would be one way of working with some kind of people or subject where it just flows. And I knew it's osteopathy is part of it, but what is it? And then going through my healing journey and suddenly noticing, wow, the most powerful thing I could ever do is share my own story and live through my story and allow my work to unfold through my story. And the moment I started, I tell you, the moment I said yes to that, things just unfolded. My podcast took direction. I started attracting patients kind of struggling with similar issues. It came up in these kind of sessions. I I started sharing on Instagram, and people wrote to me, and I started to share my work very organically. And there came this wish. Yes, I want to. Yes, that's something. That's my gift to the world. I I want to create platforms to coach, to support women. And for me, it's a lot about, I think I am, it's not that only women or men, both gender obviously um, suffer or experience eating difficulties and disorders. And yet, yes, I somehow feel a very strong draw to the work with women. There is also something about that women's circle, feminine spirit, women's wisdom, which I feel is something I'm more, it's comes more naturally to me. Not quite sure how to put it. Yeah.
Oh no, I
Mm.
completely understand. And I wonder, and
Mhm.
this might be absolute rubbish, but I wonder if I feel the same. I feel
Mhm.
really called to work with
Mhm.
women. And I wonder
Mhm.
if it's anything to do with living so much in the masculine through the eating disorder, so rigid,
Yes.
so
Mhm.
masculine, and really not embracing any
Absolutely, Julia. Yes.
now we have like
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
desire to really embrace the
Yes.
feminine.
I'm so glad that you say that now. And of course, again, that's how Eating Light of the Moon supported me a lot. And absolutely for me, that crystal, I share with you the color of my crystal. My crystal is again raspberry pink with a golden core, and it radiates all these very feminine colors out of it. And of course, it is an uncovering process of again of her to give her a voice, my feminine spirit, not that controlling masculine, no, 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 but allowing, receiving, being soft. And yes, isn't there something beautiful to share and support from women to women, because
Yes,
that's what
loving.
we are meant to do, Julia. That's what we are meant to do.
Yes, it is. It
Mm.
is. So, how can
So,
people get in contact with you and work with you?
yeah, how can people get in contact with me? Over Christmas, I renewed my webpage. So I have a sparkling new webpage,
Oh,
which is
lovely.
flurinathali.com. I also used all these colors, which I feel, yeah, symbolize for me that feminine spirit. So that's a great place to start. There is also my email address, etc. And I listed everything I offer. I'm also on Instagram. I found that so supportive, witnessing other people's journey. So I'm there as well. I
Amazing.
think
And I
it's a
will put
great,
all these links in the show notes.
yes.
And
And my
you have your own
podcast.
podcast.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, my podcast, The Breathing Body, which is a platform. On one level, I want to create a source and archive of inspiration for all women and men to fall in love with that miraculous body we inhabit. There is soon going to be one about embryology, actually, a whole episode with a guest. And on the other hand, it's like yours, a source and archive of inspiration and also encouragement and hope for, yeah, for women to find support, and to
Oh,
resonate.
this has been such a beautiful conversation.
Mm,
So pleased you came on. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And
mm,
please do rate this podcast 5 stars so that I can reach other people and really spread the message far and wide. And
yes.
I will see everybody next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julia, and thank you for the work you do, Julia. I've been a listener of your podcast before I started mine.
Oh, thank
Thank you
you.
for your work. Thank you.
Thanks.